Welcome again to another episode of the Kings in Queen City podcast. This is Taylor, and I'm here with my co-host, Ed Pugh.
Hey guys, happy to have you listening. We're definitely excited about the response that we've gotten from the episodes that we have released so far. If there's a topic you'd like to hear Taylor and I cover in a future podcast, definitely find us on our socials and share that with us. And we're probably more than happy to jump into any subject that someone's interested in hearing us discuss. We're probably pretty interested in sharing it, unless it's about, what are subjects we wouldn't talk about, Taylor?
March Madness.
March Madness would probably have
Spring baseball.
Spring baseball, we wouldn't
NASCAR
talk about.
crashes.
NASCAR in general, races or crashes.
And someone's going to be like, well, they said they weren't going to talk about race. Well, we're probably not going to talk about that either.
So geopolitical stuff probably won't make it on the podcast. Anything on E-Entertainment Television.
If you saw it standing in line at the grocery store, it probably won't make it on our
Probably
podcast.
won't make it.
The highlight of the new sensation on Facebook, not going to make the cut. In the education realm, we're going to talk about this specifically tonight is how do you get your mindset right and get rid of some of this, for lack of a better word, we call it static. And what we're going to talk about is how we started just like everyone else and how over time we've made a transition to be what I consider people that are fairly financially secure people and financially educated, and just be able to have kind of that higher level conversation.
Absolutely. And Taylor, one of the things that I think sets us apart, but you specifically apart, is how specifically you pay attention to mindset, right? Do you want to talk to us a little bit what that process is like for you or how you think about it?
Yeah, I'm very protective of my mindset. When you walk into any given store, the music that's playing in that store is designed to help your brain turn off and stop you from making critical thinking skills. That's why you're often going to hear really upbeat pop music in a lot of stores, because they're trying to encourage your endorphins to start flowing so that you spend money. Understand this is not by accident. You're being brainwashed without you knowing it.
Or manipulated, right? What they're doing is creating a specific environment where they're trying to elicit a specific response. And that response is, hey, Ed, hey, Taylor, we want you to spend money in our store, or we want you to be excited about our product, or, so definitely I think it's very intuitive to understand that there's a specific way that we can position our mindset for very positive things and a very specific way that we can position our mindset for very negative things, right?
Ed, you're absolutely right about environment trying to inspire you to spend money and to make decisions that might not be something that you'd make on your own if you were just to think about it by yourself. That's why as you're walking out of the supermarket, they have the candy right there on the aisle, so you can make that impulse buy decision and increase your spend by just a little bit.
So Taylor, as we think about how people make an impulse decision at the checkout, where they grab a candy bar and throw it on the conveyor belt and end up spending, $1.29 more at the register, how does that equate back to I protect my mindset and I'm very specific about what I allow to be thoughts that I consider for some period of time?
Yeah, a lot of it comes back to conditioning, right? We talk about how we physically work out and how we go to the gym and get exercise. I do the same daily with, I'll call it mental exercise. As I continue to expand my mindset, the reason that you feel good about that purchase at the cash register is because your brain releases endorphins that equate, hey, I'm going to get some sugar or something to that effect. Your body equates that to a positive thing for you to do. So all we have to do is train our minds to see the mindset protection that we utilize to be a positive. I almost make it into a game. I try to see how much I can consume in a given time frame. I try to see how many books I read in a given time frame. The average American is going to read something on the equation of one book a year. A very large portion of the American population isn't going to read another book after high school. And then you compare that to the stat of the average CEO reads something on the scale of 60 books a year. It's very clear where that difference comes from.
Or at least one of the major drivers is that search to continue to improve themselves, while others are content to not learn and grow and change.
And would I lie and say, hey, I never watch Netflix or go out to the movies? No, that's not true. But you have to balance it equally with how do I continue to improve myself? For me, I like to utilize my car time because I'm in the car a lot. I'm a real estate guy, so I'm driving all over town a bunch. And so my car time is my education time. A lot of times Ed will call me while I'm in my car and he kind of gets the impatient version of Taylor because he's interrupted some part of a audiobook I'm on or some part of a YouTube video that I'm really enjoying. And I think it frustrates him, but he's never polite enough to say that. So
yeah, definitely have got the, all right. Yeah, let me get right back to you, man. And then, 7 minutes later, 8 minutes later, once that part of the podcast or the audiobook that he's listening to, once that's passed, then I get a call back. All right, man. Hey, what were you trying to talk to me about? Tell me a little more about that.
That's part of knowing your partners and understanding where you're coming from. There's absolutely been times that I've worked with the flip side of that with Ed, where he was in the middle of something and I get the, hey, I'm stepping into something. Let me call you back.
Absolutely. That's happened for sure. Taylor, you've definitely caught me while I'm walking into something and, hey, I got to call you right back. Let me get back to you or something like that happens. But Taylor, you're talking about you're very protective of your mindset. What are examples of specific things that you do that you feel have really helped to strengthen, right? Because we're talking about how you exercise your mindset just like you do a physical muscle. What are ways that you've specifically worked on to strengthen those skill sets, those positive affirmations, or what are we doing specifically there?
I love where that's going. Let me step back one other side of the coin real quick, and then I'll come back around. Guys, I need you to understand how important your mindset is and how quickly you can lose it. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and the boss clicks through a television channel. When I'm referring to the boss, I'm referring to my wife, just in future podcasts. She clicks through a television channel, and there's a commercial for a horror movie on television. It had to be 20 or 30 seconds, maybe. I literally had a nightmare about that night. And so it's that quick that your mindset can shift. So now let's talk about how do we protect our mindset. One, Taylor doesn't watch horror movies. Let's just start there. But other things I do, guys, I'm always listening to some form of education. I'm always listening to an audiobook, and I kind of fluctuate between 4 or 5 kind of genres for me. It's educational biographies, real estate related, business related, a fiction book, and I kind of fluctuate between like 3 fiction books. So if you've seen Ready Player One, hey, that's one of my books. We'll give a shout out to The Martians, another one, but there's about a couple different genres and I kind of fluctuate through them to understand how to build myself up. If it's not an audiobook, I have a YouTube playlist that has 250 or so videos on it today, and I add daily. I will put a link to that playlist in the show notes. So if anyone wants to just know what Taylor listens to on a daily basis, sometimes it's one song on repeat all day. Songs that it's been recently this week. One of them was Champions with Carrie Underwood and Ludacris in it. Another one that played most of the day was the soundtrack for The Greatest Showman. The Greatest Showman. That's a good one.
And by the way, quick shout out. If you guys have not seen that movie, I challenge whether you're a real entrepreneur if you watch that movie and it does not inspire you and talk to the journey that you've been on as an individual entrepreneur. It's a beautifully written, beautifully fit. This is Ed just going over the top right now. I'm going to defend Taylor from being accused of just going over the top on this, but beautifully written, beautifully shot, great cinematography, great costumes, et cetera, but the message is amazing. So Greatest Showman. If you haven't seen it yet, it just came out on video. Definitely pick that up. I think I saw it 3 times in the theaters, if I was being honest.
Well, Ed, and let's set some precedents. How many movies did you watch in the theaters all of last year?
Probably 3.
And then you watched this one 3 times in the
absolutely.
90 days it was in theater.
Absolutely. It's a great movie, guys. Definitely check it out.
Well, this wasn't the point of the conversation. I'm going to stay on it for a minute. There's a number of really great movies out there that have really great messages that we do watch on replay. The Greatest Showman's one. Another one for me would be The Founder. Another one would be Moneyball.
Moneyball is a beautiful example of how to use analytics in an industry where it hasn't been used historically and what an advantage it can be. With my background in analytics and data management, this is definitely something that I believe there's a number of industries that have yet to really embrace. And by the way, your local real estate market is one of these. So, Taylor, not to cut us off from that, but we definitely could continue to list a lot of movies that we think are really great or other media that we think is very encouraging. One of the songs that's interesting you left off that was on repeat forever for you was Beyonce, I Was Here, which, by the way, guys, is on his playlist. So definitely check that one out too.
It's on my playlist, Ed. It actually wasn't the first video on my playlist. I had to go back and rearrange the order of the videos. So that was the very first one to play. This is going to get a little personal here. Taylor starts his day with his playlist on in the shower. So the very first thing that plays for Taylor is Beyonce, I Was Here. If you haven't heard the song yet, I need you to do me a favor and I know you're really inspired to go out there and like check it out and be like, Taylor and Ed recommended this. I need you to watch the music video first. I need you to take some downtime away from everybody else, not while you're driving. And I'm one that, again, does everything while I'm driving, but I need you to take some downtime and watch the video from the perspective of, was I here? And did I add to humanity? So that one's really powerful for us.
Going through what we've talked about, there's all types of media that we can consume to encourage our mind to consider positive thoughts, such as audiobooks, your playlist, which you said you'd share, other positive fiction that's out there. There's 300 hours of content created on YouTube every minute. So, I mean, if you just take that metric, right? It's an incredible amount of content that's just being created. And so we live in this era where there's really no shortage of positive affirmations. The challenge for a lot of our listeners is it gets drowned out by a lot of this negative media that's out there. And so things that we group generally as negative media, anything that's on the commercial radio, anything that's commercially available on the television, most movies that are out there, basically anything that's vying for your attention from a media perspective generally is encouraging you to make financial decisions that may not be in your best interest. In a lot of ways, folks who are in the category of like where Taylor and I are at, or I would put, there's just huge names in the financial literacy space. There's a lot of voices there, but in a real way, those voices are screaming against the hurricane.
Oh, for sure. The average American has, thousands of dollars worth of debt and has no interest in fixing that. We're looking for a very low minority. And so if you're on this podcast, you are the non-average American.
Like the 2% of the 1% of the 1% of the 7%. You're like the extreme rarity of someone who's seeking to improve the positioning of themselves and their family.
Ed, I'd like to talk about kind of how we got started, and specifically how I got started. I've spoke previously about being let go from a job twice and other challenges that we had as we got started. I'd like to talk about how I started to change my mindset. That's really where it all made a difference.
Yeah. I mean, Taylor, should we talk about how actually the way to change your mindset was actually a behavioral shift?
It was, for sure.
So tell us a little bit about that.
So I stumbled across a video by E.T. and
who's E.T.?
Eric Thomas.
Dr. Eric Thomas now?
Dr. Eric Thomas.
In fairness, he wasn't a doctor at the time that you did begin to listen to this video, so it's fair to call him E.T. in that context.
Ed, you're absolutely right. So Dr. Eric Thomas changed my life, and not giving him the credit where it's due would not be fair. So Dr. Eric Thomas, if you're listening, brother, I appreciate it. Thanks again for
how crazy would that be if E.T. was listening to our podcast?
If anyone knows him, man.
we do have a great picture. We'll try and put it up at some point of Taylor and I with Dr. Eric Thomas as well.
That was a great event. Look forward to seeing him. Dr. Eric Thomas, you come back through town, we still owe you that breakfast. So with all of that said, he's got a great video. It's a video of a football player doing a workout of some sort. And in the background is a speech by Dr. Eric Thomas. It's called As Bad as You Want to Breathe. I'm okay with you stopping this podcast right now and going and finding that video. Again, I'm going to promise myself I'll put that in the show notes as well. So Dr. Eric Thomas has a video called As Bad as You Want to Breathe. I listened to that 8-minute clip on repeat for about 3 weeks straight.
Nothing else, folks. Not any other radio, not any other television. That was all of the media that was consumed by Taylor for that 3-week period, while he was at work, while he was in the shower, while he was eating breakfast, lunch, dinner. Nothing else was able to be consumed without those earbuds in his ear playing this specific video.
I literally brainwashed myself and convinced myself that I had to want it badder than I wanted to breathe.
Is badder a word? Are we using that as a word these days?
I don't think we ever claimed to be grammar experts, and on a daily I'm corrected. So
that's true.
Fortunately, we still make money. Let me talk about how that started. I did listen to it in the car. I did listen to it 24 hours a day. If I was awake, it was on. It was kind of a fun experience going to work, and I'd turn on the audio. I had a job where I would sit at a desk for a few minutes at a time and then get up and go into the warehouse to pick up part and then go back to my desk. And this happened all day. So it's an 8-minute audio. There was never a time that I was sitting at my desk for an 8-minute total period. And so I got to hear different parts of the audio all day. It honestly got to the point where when I walked into other establishments and for some reason didn't have my earbuds in, very rare, but them advertising to us was offensive. And Ed's got a great story about that. We'll come back to that one. So I brainwashed myself on a very specific mindset, and then utilizing that, moved on to other methods of education, specifically audiobooks. I'm a very heavy audiobook consumer. And in fact, at the end of the podcast, I'm going to give you guys my top audiobook, but there's a bonus book.
Yeah, he's got a 1 and a 1A. I don't know how that actually works, but the top books that Taylor recommends to read.
You have to start somewhere. And so for you, it's Dr. Eric Thomas, As Bad as You Want to Breathe, please use that. It was highly inspirational to us. I've had people on the other end of the spectrum, though, that told me, Taylor, I feel like he's yelling at me. And I can hear that. I can receive that as valid feedback. There's also another video, again, on my playlist. And this is a promo for my playlist the whole way through. Some background on me and Ed is that we grew up in a Christian home. The preacher, T.D. Jakes, speaks to us on a very emotional level for us. There's a video out there called The Best of T.D. Jakes. It's 51 minutes.
And sorry to interrupt you, Taylor, but if this doesn't get you going, this specific video, this man speaks to my heart. You gotta run.
I don't know how to follow that, Ed. You're right. If you don't get fired up by T.D. Jakes, I'm almost willing to say that I'm okay with you unsubscribing from my podcast right this minute, guys.
Yeah, I mean, part of the thing is, guys, there's a very specific type of person that's going to be able to go through the things that they're going to need to go through to be successful as an entrepreneur. And it's hard work, and it's consistency, and it's tenacity. Those are the things that will make someone a successful entrepreneur. And those are, in a lot of ways, developed traits.
Ed, so we've talked about how Taylor receives media and how a lot of it for me is audio with a little bit of video. But what about the people that claim, I just don't have time? And I know we've talked about the car time. And even if your kids are with you guys, they can benefit from these motivational videos. Having your kids with a little more self-esteem, I promise, isn't going to hurt anybody. But Ed, what about the people that claim that they just don't have time? What do they do?
Yeah, I mean, look, people are going to make decisions about how they prioritize the things that they're doing. And if watching Top Chef, for example, is a top priority for them.
I love MasterChef, by the way.
Yeah, it's great, right? Like the cooking shows, watching how these people learn their art, it's really impressive. But
spoiler alert, if Taylor won the lotto tomorrow, he would go to culinary school just to learn how to cook for himself. Spoiler alert.
Not sure why Taylor's speaking in the third person there. That was a little weird for me too, guys. So as you're listening to the podcast, I can't explain that. But what I was going to is, so if you're somebody who just doesn't understand where to find time to consume better media, because I won't say different media, all of us consume media on a regular basis. So it's just about consuming better media. But if you can't find time in your schedule for whatever reason to do that, or you choose not to do that, one of the suggestions that I give a lot is, well, why don't you take a look at your social media platforms and see the type of inputs that you're receiving from a social media perspective? For example, next time you see a post from whether you're left, right, or center politically, next time you see a post that upsets you and is something that you decide you want to engage on and prove to them how wrong they are, why not just unfollow that person? Why not just remove that input from your life? And I promise we've had this conversation with thousands of people. Well, it's my right, and I can say whatever. Yeah, you sure can. But are the negative feelings that brings into your life at that moment, are they moving you towards your goal, your family, and you having a more free life? Or are they keeping you in a place that's not creating freedom? And my suggestion to you, my observation is that in most cases, no one's going to change anyone's mind on social media. So you're going to come with some set of stats, and they're going to come with some set of stats. And at the end of the day, frankly, you're both probably right and you're both probably wrong. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, and it doesn't change anyone's bank account by $1.
It's interesting the amount of people that we interact with. As we talked about before, we mentor in the Kingdom Real Estate. A number of our students will post something on Facebook. I make it a point of being their friends on Facebook so I can see what their brand is saying. And a number of people post things and then turn around and say, but I can't find XYZ after presenting this polarizing point. That's not to say you're right or wrong. And a great example is when Twinkies shut down. That became a polarizing issue for two sides of the political spectrum. One side was for the unions and one side was for free enterprise. And it shut down because of that. And so it was interesting, the people that got involved, that had no dog in the fight.
Not any one of them were probably even shareholders of what Hostess Brands, I guess. Was that the company? Anyways.
The parent company Hostess. What I need you to do is just clean up your Facebook. And this is an ongoing process. And one of my favorite processes, radio edit.
Why am I getting censored?
Before Taylor's in the shower in the morning, his very first thing he does in the morning is checks this day on Facebook. Guys, this is going to be one of the most powerful things to help you clean up your feelings and your news feeds and the weight that you drag with you. On a daily basis, I edit or remove 2 or 3 posts from years ago. It helps me promote the image that I'm trying to get across as who Taylor is and what brand I am. Me speaking out about the Twinkie epidemic isn't going to solve my issues. Well, I don't know what would, but that's not going to solve them, and that's for sure.
And part of the point is, even the person who posted those posts 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 6 years ago, that's not who I am today, right? And that's not who you are today either, Taylor. So it's like this whole idea about we're continually adjusting who we are, and that's the purpose of growth, and that's the purpose of change, and that's the purpose of all of the effort that we go to on a regular basis and we encourage our students to go through on a regular basis. The whole point of this effort is to change. Well, yeah, Taylor, you're not who you used to be.
Thankfully.
Well, yeah. Do you think the point of all this effort was to remain the same?
We put in a number of years of work, 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. every day. Literally, that was the time we were in the office. And all of that work wasn't put in so I can be where I was when I started. Yeah, Ed, now that we've talked about how we protect our mindset and some of the tactics we use, what are some specific instances that you can think of?
It's interesting you bring that up, Taylor. Just this week, I got into an Uber. And guys, one of the first things I do when I get in an Uber is ask the driver to turn the radio completely off. And I sometimes will get looks. I've had an experience one time where someone turned it off and then asked me about why I did that. And I got to spend that Uber ride talking about how I'm very specific about my mindset and controlling it and those things. But this specific Uber ride, I asked the driver to turn the radio off, and she just turns it down partway. Just turns it down, and I can still hear it. I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. Hey, would you mind turning that completely off?" And she got offended. Well, no, we're just going to keep it down. And I had just gotten in the Uber, so I said, hey, that's okay. I'll just call a different Uber, and literally got out of the Uber and called another Uber. And it's just, that's how important it is to me to protect my mindset. Another experience that's really instrumental to this type of programming is this. So I walked into a waiting room the other day, and they've got a TV in the corner, and up on the TV, ESPN's playing. Now, full disclosure, I am a huge Carolina Panthers fan. If you haven't seen a picture of me wearing a Carolina Panthers hat or jersey or shirt or something, you probably haven't seen a lot of pictures of me. Matter of fact, the wife gives me a hard time about it because I wear it everywhere. So I walk into the waiting room, and on the television, ESPN's playing. And this is back during March Madness, and there's a specific host on ESPN. I don't know the guy's name, but like they basically just sit there and scream at each other about these sports stats and how, they have some controversial question about, is Michigan going to beat, whoever else is playing, and this and that. And then they bring in these talking heads, and they have a split screen, and 7 of them are talking at one time. It's really incredible. So I walk in and I sit in the waiting room, and it's on, and I'm just grating my teeth. It's so difficult for me to listen to that I finally stand up. There's 4 or 5 others in the waiting room. And I just, as I'm walking towards the television, I'm asking them, hey, are you watching this by any chance? And each of them kind of shake their head, and I turn it off. And here's the most interesting thing that happened. They look at me and they said, wow, thank you. I thought other people were watching that. I thought other people were enjoying it. So I didn't want to interrupt them.
It's amazing how many responses you get like that. Almost identical to your Uber experience. I was at the dentist the other day. My dentist is all high speed and has this reclining chair with a massager, and they've got my TV remote and a big screen plasma on the wall mounted above me, so I can enjoy that the whole time I'm at the dentist, where I'm at the dentist, so nothing's enjoyable there. As the technician walked in, I asked her to turn it off. She puts it on mute, and I corrected it, same as you. I'm sorry, ma'am. I asked you to turn that off, which she did, and kind of had this, wow, no one has ever done that before look. And it's amazing when you understand that you're in control of your environment. Can I always turn the TV off when I'm in a waiting room? No. Can I always carry a set of headphones to allow me to screen out this negativity, this consumerism that's being advertised to me, and protect my mindset? 100%.
Absolutely. And I think the point that we're suggesting, if we had a takeaway from this episode, here's the takeaway. Choose one or two behaviors that are going to encourage your mindset to be less focused on consumerism and materialism and some of these behaviors, and focus more on entrepreneurial endeavors or strength of mindset or, caring for other people or some behaviors that are just more, I would say, altruistic in nature.
All right, guys. So we're going to wrap it up here. I did promise you my top 5, which is actually 6 books. So as you're writing this, it'll make sense. Guys, number 1 book of all time. If you have not read this book, go on YouTube. There's a free copy of it on there. It's The Richest Man in Babylon. This will do the most for the most amount of people on the planet if they were to just read it. I understand that some people are going to promo me and be like, well, there's a religious text I read. Great. Read your religious text. This book goes right behind it. This is the financial side of your spiritual education. The second book is 1A. I call this the lost chapters of The Richest Man in Babylon, and that's The Alchemist. Again, there's a free copy of this on YouTube. Just Google The Alchemist. It'll pop up.
And actually, guys, while Taylor's presenting all of these books, most of these are so widely circulated that you can get like a paperback version brand new for like $9.99, or you can get a used copy on Amazon. What, $2.20, Taylor?
I bet you could find all these books as a package for $50 total. My used bookstore actually keeps an eye out on all of these books for me. And the second one comes in, I go buy a copy. Number 2 is The One Thing. This is going to talk about being focused. Notice that none of these have been real estate related yet. Number 3, this is really common. A lot of people have read it. The 10X Rule. Number 4 is The Cash Flow Diaries. This is the first real estate related book, but it's a great intro to people new to the business. And number 5 is If You Can't Wholesale After This, I've Got Nothing For You, Volume 1 by my buddy Todd Fleming. You can get this on Amazon, and the audiobook is pending. It might even be out as of this publishing. If not, it's going to be out really shortly, guys. So with that, hey, excited. Do what you can to protect your mindset. Utilize some of these tools we've talked about, and let's see how we can change how you feel about yourself and how you feel about the world because of this.
Taylor, thanks for sharing that. Guys, we really appreciate you listening to our podcast. Definitely check us out on all of our socials, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We're Kings in Queen City. If you have another tip for controlling your mindset, share that with us on those posts, and we'd be happy to hear more about it. Until next time, guys, we will talk to you soon.